At 6, the sacked Home Secretary Suella Braverman launches an all-out attack on Rishi Sunak, telling him his plan is not working. As the new team take their places around the cabinet table, the former Home Secretary accuses the Prime Minister of failing to deliver.
Suella Braverman's attack tonight is incendiary. Incendiary because it is a direct assault, not just on the Prime Minister's ability, but on his integrity.
Also on the programme tonight, trying to make chickenpox a thing of the past. Health experts want all children to be vaccinated against the virus. A man has been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter after the death of the ice hockey player Adam Johnson in Sheffield. And the mystery humming noise that's keeping people awake at night in County Tyrone.
So you've heard this hum?
I've heard it, aye.
What's it like?
Just a...
And on BBC London, your stories of living with damp and mould after our special report on the issue. And a major milestone for what will be the country's biggest station.
And welcome to the BBC News at 6. Suella Braverman, who was sacked yesterday as Home Secretary, has launched an all-out attack on the Prime Minister, accusing him of having repeatedly failed to deliver on key policies, saying he's incapable of doing so. In her letter to the Prime Minister, Ms Braverman warned Rishi Sunak that time was running out and told him his plan is not working and he needs to change course urgently. Let's go straight to Westminster. Our political editor, Chris Mason, is there. It is quite a letter, Chris.
It really is quite a letter. When this was posted on social media about an hour ago, I printed it out and, armed with my highlighter pen, I thought I would highlight the key bits that jumped out. I then realised I'd pretty much highlighted the entire thing. It is dripping with derision about the Prime Minister. Let me read you just a couple of words that struck me as I read the letter. Betrayal, equivocation, disregard, wishful thinking and a lack of certainty. Really quite something from the woman who sat around the cabinet table as Home Secretary 48 hours ago. And this verbal assault targeted directly at the Prime Minister. Here is our Deputy Political Editor, Vicky Young.
She was an outspoken Home Secretary who said she wasn't afraid to tell the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Now Suella Braverman, sacked by Rishi Sunak, has launched a devastating personal attack on him. She says they did a deal. She supported his leadership bid on the condition he took specific steps to reduce immigration. In her letter, she writes, "You have manifestly and repeatedly failed to deliver on every single one of these key policies. Either your distinctive style of government means you are incapable of doing so, or, as I must surely conclude now, you never had any intention of keeping your promises." Ms Braverman once said her dream and obsession was to see planes taking off to Rwanda with illegal migrants on board. She says she came up with proposals to stop the European Convention on Human Rights blocking the policy. In her letter, you ignored these arguments. You opted instead for wishful thinking as a comfort blanket to avoid having to make hard choices. This irresponsibility has wasted time and left the country in an impossible position. She also repeats her criticism of the pro-Palestinian marches in London, saying more should have been done to ban them. I regret to say that your response has been uncertain, weak and lacking in the qualities of leadership that this country needs.
The Prime Minister...
Allies of the Prime Minister have rushed to his defence.
Cabinet reshuffles are nothing new, and as we go into what is probably a year before the next general election, it would be rather unusual, actually, if the Cabinet was not reset at that point. What I experienced this morning when I attended Cabinet was a united Cabinet that is totally focused on the priorities of the British people, including getting inflation down, where we're having considerable success, including stopping the boats, where we're having considerable success, but taking those tough decisions that are right for our country in the long term. And that's what this Prime Minister is doing, and we are absolutely united behind him.
This morning, Rishi Sunak was praising his united, strong team, which now includes a former Prime Minister who might have some tips on keeping the Tory party happy. Labour say it's time for the country to turn a page on the dark chapter of Tory rule.
Suella Braverman's letter is just the latest instalment in a Tory psychodrama that's been playing out over the last 13 years, holding the rest of the country to ransom.
Cabinet reshuffles sometimes go by unnoticed. This one won't. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's go back to Chris Mason now. How damaging could this be for Rishi Sunak?
It's not exactly ideal, is it, as they munch their tea in Downing Street tonight, not least because I think we can expect to hear more from Suella Braverman. Now, she says in this letter that when she accepted the job of Home Secretary from the Prime Minister, she presented a list of conditions in a document that she claims she handed over to Downing Street and that Rishi Sunak agreed to. I asked her team tonight, OK, then let's have a look at this document, and I was told that that was not for today, which suggests that they plan to continue drip feeding this pungent critique over the next couple of days, with possibly the consequence of that furthering damage on the Prime Minister. Now, Number 10 tonight, in their own response, a spokesman saying rather acidly that the Prime Minister is committed to actions, not words. And as far as actions or the lack of them are concerned, the focus tomorrow here will switch to the Supreme Court, which has to decide whether the government's controversial plan to send some migrants who arrive on small boats to Rwanda can go ahead. Now, Suella Braverman is very critical in her letter of the whole approach to this idea. It's a huge moment, this, for the government tomorrow, and I think we can expect, after the decision of the lawyers, further words from Suella Braverman. She will have more to say. The former Home Secretary is not going quietly.
Chris Mason with the latest there from Westminster. Thank you. Could chickenpox be made a disease of the past? Health experts are advising the government that all children should be vaccinated against the chickenpox virus as toddlers. But why? Our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, is here to explain. Fergus.
Well, Sophie, chickenpox is a highly contagious and very common childhood disease triggered by the varicella zoster virus. It causes an itchy, spotty rash with small blisters. In most cases, chickenpox is a mild illness, but the wounds can become infected with bacteria. In rare cases, it can cause brain swelling and even be fatal. 3-year-old Leah spent 9 days in hospital earlier this year after getting chickenpox complications.
Leah was really ill when she got chickenpox. She seemed fine, and then went really downhill. She got sepsis, was treated for cellulitis, flew lighted to the Children's Hospital, and had 2 emergency surgeries to try and save her life. So I would definitely recommend the vaccine if I'd have known then what I know now.
The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation recommends 2 doses of chickenpox vaccine at 12 and 18 months to be combined with the MMR jab into a single shot. It also wants a catch-up programme for older children.
It'll prevent the milder end of the chickenpox cases, which are unpleasant for children and their families, but importantly, prevent the tens of thousands of GP visits each year, the thousands of hospitalisations from chickenpox and its complication, and also the very severe cases and sadly the deaths that occur.
Back in 2009, the JCVI ruled out a vaccine programme over fears it might cause a rise in cases of shingles in middle age. Shingles is a painful condition where the chickenpox virus gets reactivated. But the committee says nearly 30 years of evidence from the US suggests this won't happen. The government says it'll consider the new JCVI recommendation. For now, the vaccine is available privately, but costs around £75 a dose. Sophie.
Fergus, thank you. South Yorkshire police have arrested a man on suspicion of manslaughter following the death of an ice hockey player in Sheffield last month. Adam Johnson, who played for the Nottingham Panthers, suffered a serious neck injury during a match against the Sheffield Steelers. He later died in hospital. Navtesh Johal is in Nottingham Forest tonight. What more can you tell us?
Sophie, this is where Adam Johnson played ice hockey for his team, the Nottingham Panthers. And his death has shocked fans of the sport, not just here in this city or even just in the UK, but around the world. Last month, he was playing a match for the Nottingham Panthers against the Sheffield Steelers when his neck was cut by a skate. He was pronounced dead at hospital, and a post-mortem examination later confirmed that he had died of a fatal neck injury. Now today, South Yorkshire police have arrested a man on suspicion of manslaughter, and they say that he remains in custody. Now, the death of Adam Johnson at the age of just 29 has led to a huge outpouring of grief. You can see some of the flowers left here by fans behind me. There have also been tributes, vigils, and a special memorial that was held in Adam Johnson's hometown in America. And at that event, his girlfriend described him as the love of her life. Now, there will be lots of interest in what happens next, but the police have asked the public to refrain from any comment or speculation which may hinder their investigation. Sophie.
Thank you. The head of the largest hospital in Gaza says a mass grave has been dug on site to bury dozens of people who have died there. He said 30 people have died since fuel ran out at the weekend and that there is no longer electricity at the morgues. The Gaza Strip has been under siege by the Israel Defense Forces after Hamas launched its attacks in Israel on the 7th of October. Hamas, which governs Gaza, is designated a terrorist organisation by the UK. Israel says the Al-Shifa hospital compound conceals an underground command centre used by Hamas, but doctors working there deny that. The director of the hospital says 179 people, including 7 babies, are now being buried in the mass grave at the complex. And this satellite image, confirmed by BBC Verify, shows Israeli tanks only about 600 metres from the Al-Shifa hospital. Our chief international correspondent, Orla Guerin, has the story. Her report contains distressing images.
The sounds of battle ring out in Gaza City. Hard to imagine these were once bustling streets. Israel is pushing forward, despite international concern about the cost. Its forces closing in on key targets, posing for photographs inside the Hamas parliament in Gaza City. Its troops are now at the gates of Al-Shifa hospital. Israel claims there's a Hamas headquarters underneath. President Biden says the hospital must be protected. Inside, thousands of civilians are sheltering alongside hundreds of patients, according to the hospital director. These pictures, taken last month, show a functioning neonatal intensive care unit. But now these premature babies are packed together for warmth due to power shortages. And in the grounds, so many decomposing bodies that a mass grave has been dug. Doctors say the hospital itself is now a health risk.
The dead bodies which have been in the hospital for more than 5 days now, more than 120 dead bodies within the hospital area. With a very bad smell there, and we are sure all kinds of infections and diseases will be transmitted from that one.
Just across the Gaza border inside Israel, we joined ultra-Orthodox volunteers today, confronting the darkest horrors. They are still searching for fragments of human remains. Here, inside bomb shelters, where Israelis hid in terror last month from Hamas gunmen. Well, the search has just begun here, but already the team have found human remains. This difficult, painstaking work is going on every day. DNA tests are continuing. Funerals are still being held. For Israel, October the 7th hasn't ended. It is an ongoing national trauma. What you find here could bring an answer to some families.
Yes, sure. This is why we do this job. And we want to bring those families the announcement about their beloved ones.
Of course, it's the last thing they want to hear, that they're gone.
Yes, definitely. It's the last thing they want to hear, but they want to hear something.
The volunteers themselves get counselling to cope with what they see. Orla Guerin, BBC News, on the Israel-Gaza border.
A British family from Blackpool who moved to Gaza a year ago are back in the UK after fleeing their home with only a small suitcase between them. Emad Abuasi, his wife and 4 children, arrived back last week. Our correspondent Hal Griffith has been speaking to them.
One step at a time, Emad and his son Amir are still finding their bearings a week after arriving in Cardiff. It's a year since they left Blackpool for Gaza to be near Emad's family. The children were settled and enjoying trips to the beach until the conflict started.
I remember I was just going to bed, I was just sat on my phone, and then the neighbour is banging on the door, and we open it, and he's saying, run, the building in front of us is going to get bombed, and we was asking why, and he said there's no time to talk, we just need to get out of here.
They fled northern Gaza with just a suitcase between 6 of them, heading south to stay in a flat with 40 others. As they tried several times to cross over to Egypt, Amir spoke about their journey.
The north of Gaza have been told to evacuate from there and come here. And now we're just here today waiting for the Rafah crossing to open, inshallah.
As British passport holders, they were eventually allowed to cross, leaving behind their new life and Emad's family.
This is the sadness moment I have been crossing my whole life. When I left the border, I was looking behind me like that, just imagining who's going to be alive, who's going to be die after all this. I don't know who to pick, but as I said before, everybody's life there is in danger. Could be my mom passed away tomorrow, get attacked, my brother, my cousin, my neighbor, my friend. Something what kind of just hoping Allah, God help everyone for settle all this problem. The kids there,
They came to Cardiff as a friend lives here, but they need somewhere to live and for the children to learn.
As soon as we get settled, we can start to get into school and that. But that's kind of the most important thing right now, to get into school. So, yeah, we need to get a house.
After the chaos of conflict, they are simply grateful to be alive, but not sure where their journey will take them next. Howell Griffith, BBC News, Cardiff.
The time is just after 6:15, our top story this evening. As the new team take their places around the cabinet table, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, launches an all-out attack on Rishi Sunak, telling him his plan is not working. And coming up, how artificial intelligence is being used to predict the weather.
At 6:30, tributes are paid to a family including 3 children who died in a Hounslow house fire. Plus, Kew is getting festive. We find out what it takes to put on a magical light trail.
McDonald's has fired 18 workers in the UK since a BBC investigation uncovered hundreds of allegations of harassment at the restaurant chain. The company's UK boss apologised unreservedly when he appeared before MPs today. He said an investigation unit had been contacted by more than 400 people after the BBC found that workers as young as 17 were being groped and harassed almost routinely. Our employment correspondent Zoe Conway reports.
McDonald's does 100% have a problem with sexual harassment.
It's just a disgusting behaviour, and it's meant to be a friendly environment, and it's not.
I would get really upset about going in to work, and I would cry a lot before my shift.
It was voices like these, heard during the months-long BBC investigation into McDonald's, that led to the chief executive, Alistair McCrow, being summoned to Parliament.
These testimonies are truly, truly horrific. It's very hard to listen to be in charge of the business where some of these things have occurred.
In July, the company set up an investigations unit. Today, the CEO revealed it had received 400 complaints, including of sexual harassment, racism and bullying. He said some cases have gone to the police and 18 staff members have been fired.
Mr McCrory, it sounds like profit is more important than protecting workers.
It's absolutely not the case. The most important thing in our business is our people. Our people are our brand, our people are the face of McDonald's to our customers. We do everything we can to look after our people.
Employees have told the BBC that when allegations were made about a manager, rather than discipline them, they were moved to another store. For the first time publicly, the CEO admitted this had been happening.
A manager will not be moved to another restaurant to avoid disciplinary. That will now be dealt with within that particular in that particular restaurant.
Now be dealt with. It wasn't in the past.
Moving people was something that used to occur.
Emily and Ed, two ex-McDonald's workers, were in the room as the CEO gave evidence.
When I left the room, what I did feel reassured about was the fact that he would continue to deflect from the issue and make himself and make his whole PR team and make McDonald's as a whole look like they're doing something about something where nothing is being done.
It's great that people are becoming more aware, but it's really not great. It's upsetting that this is happening on such a huge level that it has come to Parliament.
McDonald's teenage workers feel like they're finally being heard, but they've told us they want the company to go further to keep them safe. Zoe Conway, BBC News.
A senior officer involved in the Stephen Lawrence murder case was corrupt, according to a secret Metropolitan Police report from the year 2000 that has been uncovered by the BBC. It said Ray Adams was cleared by a corruption probe which relied on false testimony from a man linked to the family of one of Stephen's killers. The revelation contradicts years of police denial about the role of corrupt officers in the case. Daniel De Simone reports.
The spectre of police corruption has long haunted the Stephen Lawrence murder. For 3 decades, Scotland Yard kept the secret we now expose.
The Met knew about it. That's what's so shocking.
Today we reveal a Met Police report concluded that a senior officer involved in the case, Ray Adams, was corrupt. The early failure to bring Stephen's killers to justice led to suspicion that corruption infected the investigation. Father of one killer was Clifford Norris, a gangster from a criminal family known for suspicious contact with police. The public inquiry into the murder probed the issue. It didn't find corruption.
Somebody contacted us this morning.
Ray Adams, a former commander, appeared as a witness. But I've now seen a secret Scotland Yard report into the Stephen Lawrence case that concludes Ray Adams was corrupt. It says Ray Adams was cleared by a flawed corruption probe which relied on lies from an informant linked to the family headed by the father of one of Stephen's killers. It says a totally fictitious account by the informant was used to discredit a witness against Ray Adams. The informant must have been coached by Ray Adams or another officer, and this amounted to flagrant acts of attempting to pervert the course of justice. The public inquiry into the murder didn't hear about this evidence from the informant. The barrister for Stephen's family says the information would have been key.
The Met seemed to have covered up the true nature of Adams. They must have known what he was really like. It would have made, in my view, a very substantial difference.
The witness discredited by the informant was criminal James Malone, who'd made comments apparently suggesting he'd paid Ray Adams.
I was in trial at the Inner London Sessions, and whilst
The informant said he'd heard Malone boast of making false corruption claims about Adams, but the secret report says this was a lie. There was no link between the informant and Malone. It says there was no evidence Ray Adams influenced the murder inquiry. Stephen's family now want further investigation by the Met.
The BBC is doing its job, investigating what happened in Stephen's case. So there's a real need to look at this. And if there is a tiny scintilla of that happening, the Met should take it up with open arms.
Ray Adams says he's asked the Met to appoint a senior officer to investigate the serious allegations against him. The Met didn't answer my questions. The force says it will review material before deciding whether any further action is required. Stephen's family want justice and the full truth. Daniel De Simone, BBC News.
Storm Debbie has been wreaking havoc across all 4 nations of the UK, with flights cancelled, roads closed and thousands left without power. It is the 4th named storm of the winter so far. Our climate editor Justin Rolat reports now on how artificial intelligence is being used to predict the weather more accurately than ever before.
The weather is one of the most complex physical systems on Earth. Learning to forecast it accurately has transformed the way we live. It means we know what to wear in the morning, of course, but it also saves lives by giving us warning of extreme weather like impending storms, floods and heat waves. The problem is traditional weather forecasts involve vast amounts of data and use some of the biggest supercomputers in the world.
So it starts with about 800 million observations coming in every day. So those are from satellites observing the Earth, they're from sensors on aircraft or buoys in the ocean. We then use our models to select which are going to be the most important. These are then ingested into a physics model, which then makes a prediction for the next hours and days ahead.
These models have been very successful, producing more and more accurate forecasts. AI takes a different approach. Instead of trying to model how the world works, it learns how weather patterns evolve using historic data and bases its predictions on that, and it is getting very good. A new tool created by Google DeepMind now outperforms traditional medium-range weather forecasts on virtually all measures. It uses much less computing power and can produce forecasts in under a minute rather than in hours.
The main advantage of this AI approach is that it's extremely accurate. It learns from decades of data and is able to be more accurate than the industry gold standard. A second benefit of an AI model is that it's extremely fast to make prediction. It doesn't solve a complex equation, so it can make prediction extremely fast on a very small machine.
The new tool, called GraphCast, has proved particularly good at tracking big storms, like Hurricane Lee, which hit the Atlantic coast of the US and Canada in September. The traditional forecast predicted its path 6 days ahead. AI gave 9 days warning, giving communities more time to batten down the hatches. But AI will never totally replace traditional numerical weather forecasting systems, say its designers, because the historic data it bases its predictions on is generated by those models. Justin Rolat, BBC News.
There were ceremonial gun salutes in honour of the King's 75th birthday earlier today in London's Green Park and at the Tower of London. King Charles has chosen to mark the day by launching a project to help people facing food poverty. It's also understood that he received a transatlantic birthday phone call from his son, Prince Harry. A mysterious humming noise that's keeping people awake at night in a town in Northern Ireland is baffling investigators who are trying to work out where it's coming from. Residents in Omagh in County Tyrone have complained of a persistent buzzing sound, which has left them unable to sleep for weeks, as our Ireland correspondent Chris Page reports.
There's a buzz around this town, but it's not to do with conventional nightlife. A hum is the subject of bafflement, some irritation and a little banter. So you've heard this hum?
I've heard it, aye.
What's it like?
Just a... But you can hear it when you're lying in bed at night time.
It's like vibrating noise, real loud one at night, but 12-1 every night. Aye.
Does it keep you awake? Or?
Not really now, but it did the first night.
Yeah.
Sort of used to it now.
There are others who know about the hum, but haven't heard it with their own ears.
I haven't heard a thing, but I don't know where it's coming from.
Bit of a mystery, huh?
It is a mystery.
Yeah. Is it causing a bit of talk around the town?
Would be someone snoring beside you, maybe.
You never know.
You never know.
They say that's annoying a lot of people, but never heard. Maybe my hearing's bad.
Well, this area is said to be a hum hotspot, but the noise has been noticed across Omagh, and the theories are growing.
Now, if you go into the meadows and you shout hello, you'll hear it over at the golf club because they're an echo.
Right. So
There's an echo.
So there could be acoustics at play here?
There could.
The local council says it's difficult to pinpoint the source of the sound. Officials are considering whether to bring in specialist equipment or an expert company. For now, the Omagh hum is an unexplained phenomenon. Chris Page, BBC News, Omagh.
Time for a look at the weather now. Sarah Keith Lucas is with us with a spectacular sunset.
Yeah, absolutely right, Sophie. We had a lot of rain today, but as the rain cleared away and the sun set, that really lit up some of these cumulonimbus clouds. So really dramatic looking cumulonimbus there in Leicestershire, lit up by the setting sun just a little bit earlier on. And many of us have seen some showers or longer spells of rain today. We've had an area of rain in the south that's tracked its way eastwards. Showers moved in from the north and the west. So we've still got a lot of flood alerts and flood warnings in force, but we're going to see something a little bit drier for the next 24 hours or so, especially towards the south. So some brighter conditions in the south, but it is a north-south split. And further north, we're expecting more cloud and outbreaks of rain at times into tomorrow. Now, we're already seeing the rain easing from the south, but we've got an area of low pressure that's going to be slow moving through tonight, sitting across parts of Scotland. A couple of weather fronts associated with that. So yes, cloudy with patchy rain for parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, far north of England too. Further south across the UK, a few showers, but some drier, clearer conditions too. And for most of us, temperatures around 4 to 8 degrees, but could be a touch colder than that across parts of northern Scotland. Could be just a touch of frost for some. So through the day tomorrow, yes, a north-south split thing. So we've got the cloud across Scotland into northern England, and first thing for Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain, but it will brighten up for Northern Ireland, and further south across England and Wales should be some sunshine, just 1 or 2 showers in the west. It'll also brighten up across the far north of Scotland for the likes of the Northern Isles towards Aberdeenshire as well. Temperatures about 7 to 10 in the north, but further south around 10 to 13 degrees. But the unsettled weather continues towards the end of the week. We've got 2 more areas of low pressure approaching from the south and the west on Thursday. So I think many of us are seeing some outbreaks of rain at times on Thursday. A window of dry weather for Friday, but then yet again, it's looking unsettled, blustery and pretty wet into the weekend. Sophie.
Sarah, thank you very much. And that is it from the BBC News at 6. Time now for our news teams where you are. Goodbye.